right, well, with that, let's go ahead and get work session started this evening. John will be on in just a moment, I believe, but we can get going with agenda review. So tonight, we've got about 9 things to go through, starting with revised findings from last week's CUP 2376. As a reminder, this is the land group. And it's at 6880 South Eisenman Road, and that was the conditional use permit for an automotive sales lot on 24.5 acres in a C3D DA and C4D zone. We are recommending approval of our revised findings, and so we can add that to the consent agenda if you so wish. Moving into the hearing items, item 1 is SOS 2326 from David Benoit. This was deferred from last week due to lateness of hour. This is a legacy code item. It is at 3006 West Gerard Street. It was a weird way to say that address, my bad. It's a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct sidewalk as part of a minor land division on 0.63 acres in an R1C single family zone. We are recommending denial, so we will be hearing that one. Item 2 is also legacy code. It is CVA 2323 for Jason Martindale. This one was deferred from February 5th, 2024. And this is located at 4809 West Albion Street. It's a variance to exceed the maximum fence height and the side setback on 0.18 acres in an R3D multifamily residential with design review zone. We are recommending denial, so we'll be hearing that one as well. Moving on to item 3 is SUB 2362 Ultra Clean Subdivision. This is also a legacy code item. This is located at 8924 West Franklin Drive. It's a preliminary plat for a commercial subdivision comprised of 3 buildable and 1 common lots on 3.6 acres in an M1D or light industrial with design review zone. We are recommending approval, and I believe we can try for consent on item 3. Item 4 is CUP 2379 for K&M Engineering. This is also a legacy code item. It is located at 2730 West Airport Way. It's a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment associated with a coffee shop on 2.96 acres in a C3D service commercial with design review zone. We are recommending approval, but the applicant has expressed opposition to conditions number 2 and number 3, so we will be hearing that one this evening. Item 5 is CUP 2359 for Idaho Electric Signs. It's a legacy code item. This one was deferred. Microphone. Okay, it's back. Was deferred from February 5th, 2024, and is asking for deferral to a future date. Again, the site was not posted, so we're just putting it to future date. But that was at 5550 East Warm Springs Ave, conditional use permit for an EMD monument sign associated with a school on 3.23 acres in an R1C DA zone. Again, we're recommending denial to a date in the future on that one. Item 6 is CUP 24-2 for Yesco Outdoor Media. This is our first modern zoning code one we'll be hearing. Wow! This is located at 11505 West Fairview Ave, and it's a conditional use permit for an off-site advertising sign or a billboard located on 1.16 acres in an MX3 mixed-use active zone.
Crystal's staff is so fancy. Wireless microphone.
Excellent. Love this. Now
Oh.
yeah. Get ready for my karaoke
would you like
days,
to join
guys.
us up front, Crystal?
Yes. Okay, item 7. Right, keep it together, guys. Item 7 is CUP 24-3 for Kimley Horn. This is another modern zoning code application, and it's located at 711 North Curtis Road. It's a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing medical facility on 5.25 acres in an MX1 DA or mixed use neighborhood with development agreement zone. We are recommending approval, but the applicant has expressed opposition to condition number 5, so we will be hearing that one as well. And then
Source
last but
monitoring
certainly
first
not least is item 8, sub 24-2 and sub 24-3. This is Garner Vines and Taffy Downs subdivision. This might look familiar. You guys have already seen this one. It did expire, and so it's come back in under the modern zoning code. It's located at 12-371 and 12-553 West Goldenrod Ave. And it's 2 prelim and final plats for 2 residential subdivisions on 13.1 acres in an R1B residential suburban zone. The first preliminary plat, sub 24-2 for Garner Vines subdivision, consists of 13 residential buildable lots on 8.28 acres. And then the second preliminary and final plat is sub 24-3 for Taffy Downs subdivision, and it is comprised of 12 buildable lots on 4.82 acres. We are recommending approval on this, but the applicant has opposed condition number 2A, and so we will be hearing that one as well. So once again, we can try for consent on item A, 3, and 6. We'll be deferring item 5 due to lack of site posting, and we'll be hearing items 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8. Any questions? Excellent. All right, you got 6 minutes to
Okay.
get that glass of water, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you, Crystal.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedure for public hearings begins with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item is placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, and neighborhood association presentations, and then followed by public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Here.
Danley,
Here.
Moore, here, Mooney, Gillespie,
Here.
Seha,
Here.
Torres,
Here.
Doan,
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Great, thank you. Okay, we do have one item up for a deferral, so we'll take that up first this evening. That is item number 5. This is CUP 23-59 Idaho Electric Signs. This was also deferred from our February 5th, 2024 meeting. Project address is 5550 East Warm Springs Avenue, a conditional use permit for an electronic message display monument sign associated with an existing educational institution located on 3.23 acres in R1C zone. This item will be deferred to a future date. That date has not been set as of yet. Is there anyone attending tonight that was hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay, very good. Looks like no one's here to testify, so I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for deferral of this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
Make a motion that we defer to a future date, item number 5, CUP 23-59, Idaho Electric Signs located at 5550 East Warm Springs Avenue, a conditional use permit for an electronic message display.
Second.
Great, thank you. I have a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion on the matter? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yep.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a few items eligible for the consent agenda. We'll take those items up now. Without objection, I will place item A on the consent agenda. This is CUP 23-76, the land group at 6880 South Eisenman Road. These are revised findings from the hearing last week regarding a conditional use permit for an automotive sales lot on 24.5 acres in a C3D DA zone and a C4D zone. So without objection, I'll place that item on consent. Okay, and moving along, it looks like next up for possible inclusion and consent is item number 3. SUB 23-62 Ultra Clean Subdivision at 8924 West Franklin Road. This is a preliminary plat for a commercial subdivision comprised of 3 buildable and 1 common lot on 3.6 acres in an M1D zone. And is the applicant present? Great. And Stephanie, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Yes, sir. Okay, great. Let the record show the applicant is present and in agreement with the staff report. Is there anybody in attendance tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? I did. Yep. Thank you. Now you can tell. I like it. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item 3 on consent. And let's see, moving along, up next is item number 6. CUP 24-2 Yesco Outdoor Media at 11505 West Franklin Avenue. A conditional use permit for an off-site advertising sign located on 1.16 acres in MX3 zone. And is the applicant present? Okay. And are you gentlemen in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Yes. Terrific. Let the record show they are present and in agreement. I'm guessing, is one of you Steve by chance? Okay, great. So you signed up? I did. Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay. And is there anyone in attendance hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay, look good there. So we'll go ahead and place item 6 on the consent agenda. And I believe that does it for consent, and I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the following items. Item A, CUP 23-76, the land group, a conditional use permit for automotive sales located at 6880 South Eisenman Road, which is a revised finding. Item number 3, SUP 23-62, Ultra Clean Subdivision located at 8924 West Franklin Road, a preliminary plat for a commercial subdivision. And item number 6, CUP 24-02, Yesco Outdoor Media located at 11505 West Fairview Avenue, a conditional use permit for an off-site advertising sign with the respective terms and conditions in their staff reports.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Danley and Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion on consent? And if the clerk would please note that my vote for consent will not include item A. I'll be recusing from item A. Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll regarding consent?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right. Okay. Back to the top of our agenda. We have a handful of items still to hear tonight. Up first is item number 1. This is SOS 23-26, David Benoit. This was deferred from our March 4th meeting, last week's meeting. The address is 3006 West Girard Street. A waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct sidewalk as part of a minor land division on 0.63 acres in R1C zone. First, we're going to hear from staff. David Mosher.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I
Oh.
just want to announce that I am the current president of the Sunset Neighborhood Association where this is located. I don't have any additional information than what we got in our packet. So
Okay.
our neighborhood is not, association is not taking this up. So
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Appreciate that. And go ahead and hear from staff.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The applicant is requesting a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct curb gutter and sidewalk as part of a minor land division located at 3006 West Girard Street on 0.62 acres in an R1C zone. The requested improvements includes the installation of a half of a 33-foot wide street section and 5-foot attached sidewalk along Girard abutting the site. And as noted, these improvements are required as part of a minor land division approval. And as you can see from the slide, the area is comprised of detached single-family neighborhood with sidewalk improvements along Hill, which are shown as it's a thin line, green line here. And adjacent to the west of the site is the Boise City Canal, indicated in this dash blue line on the slide. The record of survey was approved for the subject property, dividing into 4 buildable lots with the condition that Girard Street be improved as a half 33-foot wide street section with 5-foot attached sidewalk. The ROS design, or the record of survey design, had 2 lots taking access from Hill Road from McCommon Drive here, and 2 lots taking access from Girard Street. The record of survey also shows the Boise City Canal along the west property line. The applicant contends that the street improvements should be waived since they will not connect into adjacent street improvements due to the presence of the bridge over the irrigation canal. They also contend that these street improvements adjacent to the irrigation canal and the bridge could be a danger to motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Basically, the pedestrians might not realize the sidewalk is end and accidentally fall into the canal, or that constructing the 33-foot wide sidewalk or street section next to the narrow bridge could cause a section of the improved pavement to abut the canal itself and the bridge, resulting in cars potentially hitting the bridge abutment or into the canal itself. The Highway District submitted a letter expressing these exact same concerns. To address these concerns, signage could be placed indicating the sidewalk is terminating, and the sidewalk could stop short of the canal edge, which would alert pedestrians to the situation at hand. And also, based on the measurement, it appears that construction of a half of that 33-foot wide street section would result in approximately a 6-foot section of improved pavement abutting the canal, based on the drawing provided by the applicant. The project report indicated that a 3-foot pavement overlap next to the canal would be present, but that was based on measurements taken from the aerial photograph. This is a far more accurate drawing, so I would rely upon this one. However, I would note that the section adjacent to the curb line would normally be occupied by parked cars, and is a little bit out of the way of the actual travel lane. Alternatively, there is a solution that the half-street section could be stopped short, about maybe 15 or 16 feet, and then the edge of pavement would naturally transition back into the narrow bridge crossing as roughly shown here, and as basically what's currently happening on site anyways, next to the gravel road. In this situation, the improved street section and sidewalk would not directly abut the pavement. Finally, there is also signage adjacent to the bridge abutment that will remain and will continue to warn motorists that there is a narrow bridge crossing at this location. So in conclusion, the planning team recommends denial of the sidewalk waiver. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, David. Next one from the applicant.
Some slides that are coming up.
Perfect. Is 10 minutes good?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thanks for hearing our information this evening. My name is Dave Tuthill, Tuthill. I live at 2918 North El Rancho Place in Boise, 83704. And as you know, the application was made by David Benoit. I purchased the property on January 3rd, so I'm the new owner.
Okay.
So here's the timeline. On November 16th, David Benoit requested a waiver of the sidewalk requirement along Girard Street. There's no objection to the sidewalk requirement along Hill Road. This is just the Girard Street portion. The city, on the 28th of November, the city issued a minor land division approval letter to David Benoit, including a Girard Street sidewalk requirement. On the 3rd of January, Boise Real Estate Holdings, my company, purchased this property. And on the 14th of February, ACHD sent an email recommending the waiver for 2 reasons, including safety concerns. I think the city requirement for sidewalks is reasonable. It's a good policy. Where there's sidewalks where I live, I think everywhere it's reasonable, sidewalks should be in place. The Hill Road requirement for this project for a sidewalk is reasonable. No concerns about that. I'm working on another project with a parcel on Saxton Avenue that does not presently have sidewalks. I anticipate putting sidewalks in that situation. So I believe in sidewalks. There's a role for sidewalks. My concern is that a new sidewalk on Girard Street would be dangerous and disconnected, and the requirement should be waived. As Mr. Mosier has identified, the property in green is the property, and as you can see on the north and east sides, Hill Road comes along the property. There's a sidewalk there already. On the south side is Girard Street. There's no sidewalk there now. One can see the sidewalk along Hill Road, and it kind of curves around a little bit toward Girard Street and then stops. The Planning Division project report says that the granting of this waiver would result in missed pedestrian connection opportunities for the rest of the neighborhood, as there is a potential for infill and redevelopment opportunities to occur within the adjacent neighborhood. And there is existing sidewalk along Hill Road, which is correct. There is a sidewalk there. In addition, the report says the site constraints, that is the bridge over the irrigation canal, on the adjacent properties do not preclude future sidewalk connections to the adjacent neighborhood. This subdivision, and this area, as many of you know, Hill Road in Girard, is basically a no sidewalk area. The exception here in this picture are the sidewalks along Hill Road proper. The rest of this area, there are no sidewalks. So it's not as if the Girard Street property is out of step. There just are no other sidewalks on this picture other than those on Hill Road. And when standing at the corner, at the intersection of Girard Street and Hill Road, looking kind of northwest up Hill Road and to the west along Girard Street, one can see the sidewalk along Hill Road ending, and it curves around into a property that doesn't really look like it's going to be redeveloped. It's not large enough to be split up. And on the south side of that property, there's a fence and a retaining wall and a hillside. So continuing the Hill Street property, the sidewalk onto that property looks unlikely. Zooming in a little bit, here's what it looks like. So we're looking at this, and it just doesn't look likely that that area under the fence is going to be a sidewalk someday. It's just not conducive to sidewalk. And the likelihood of development, I think, is low. So, and toward the back of this picture, one can see the mailbox that is part of the Girard Street property, my property. So the likelihood of connection between Girard Street to this neighboring property that's at the intersection of Hill Road and Girard looks pretty unlikely. And zooming in just a little bit more, one can see that the proposed sidewalk would be actually to the right of this retaining wall, and it would be out of step with the neighboring property. And this property slopes downhill. And when I first saw it, I thought, well, that sidewalk would be a great place for a skateboarder to be. And it's dangerous. And when people walk along here, they don't walk into the property and then out to the bridge. They walk along to the left of what we see as the yellow and black sign. That's where people walk. They walk actually to the left of the black pavement repair there. So the likelihood of this sidewalk actually being used, I think, is pretty low. This diagram is in your packet. It's part of the city's proposed requirement for sidewalk placement. And this is facing east. Note that this sidewalk suggested placement abuts a retaining wall. That's the retaining wall that we saw the other side of in the previous pictures. Then looking around toward the canal, the sidewalk placement it would just empty into Boise City Canal. It's not a sidewalk that would really be used as a sidewalk in my view. Yet another picture. Here's the city canal. One can see the edge of the bridge toward the lower part of the picture. The sidewalk location just doesn't seem like it will be used like a sidewalk. And Mr. Mosier already identified this picture, which would show the sidewalk abutting the neighboring property, which is a retaining wall. There's no connection likely. That's on the east side. On the west side, it would abut the canal. I went and talked with the ACHD about this particular requirement, and Carolee Troyer looked at this, and she's familiar with the project. She wrote a 7-page comment letter to the original approval, and her letter was dated November 6, 2023. And she sent a follow-up email based on my request to take a look at the safety of this sidewalk. And that's part of your packet. It's the second to last page in your packet. This is her email. And she identifies 2 concerns. First of all, frontage improvements abutting the site on Girard Street are not recommended, as they would cause a safety concern along that portion of Girard Street. Pavement widening and sidewalk would lead vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians into the bridge's rail and into the canal. Now, it's true that there could be signage and a big blockage, but it doesn't seem like that would be the purpose of a sidewalk. And she says, furthermore, when ACHD does reconstruct the bridge, there may be, and it's not proposed to be constructed right now. It's not on the 5-year plan. It's not proposed to be reconstructed, but it's at some point it is reconstructed. There may be some heightening requirement, which would cause any of the improvements constructed now as a part of this project to be reconstructed then as part of the bridge or roadway project. So henceforth, I respectfully request that the sidewalk waiver be approved. Also, Ben Simple has a few items, if he could say,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Surely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1450 West Bannock Street, Boise 83702. Yeah, I'm helping Dave with his follow-up project that is going to occur on the northern 2 lots after the split is finalized. And I just wanted to reinforce, for one, the build, tear out, rebuild that ACHD had mentioned. City of Boise has some sustainability goals, and it feels like installing about 93 feet of sidewalk at an unknown elevation to then have to tear that out to be reconstructed. I appreciate the attached versus detached. It does bring it a little closer to the roadway, but as you can see, the drawing that had the red and blue diagram on it shows that sidewalk still going substantially into that canal, about 6 feet separated from where the travel way is now, which would be paved in between. and does still run directly into that kind of sloped and retaining wall area. That really doesn't, even if they move the road section based on what the road right of way and the improvements are now, they would have to shift the entire road section over to get sidewalk along that neighbor's property on Girard, which may or may not, require right of way dedication. And there's literally no sidewalk on Girard either side within this neighborhood. So not that that is a precursor to not requiring or wanting sidewalks, but it seems like a future project with a bridge reconstruction would be a much better time for sidewalks to be addressed along this entire frontage and on Girard. With that, I'd stand for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ben. First, we're checking in with the neighborhood association. I don't know. Is it? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, lights on. I only had 1 week off, Milt. Okay, I haven't been here. I mean, I was here like 3 weeks ago. Is there anyone here from the Sunset Neighborhood Association? A few folks online. Okay, doesn't look like it. So we'll go ahead and open this up for any questions by the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie, please.
I have a question for the city. So this famous retaining wall on the adjacent property, is that located inside the street right of way already? Or is it on that other property, other
Maybe,
person's property?
Maybe David or Crystal, can we pull up that exhibit? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So in the pictures, like the red bar, the red where the sidewalk is supposed to go, runs smack into the corner of that retaining wall. So is that implying that that retaining wall is actually built out off that person's property and into the dedicated road right of way?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I think currently the retaining wall is built along the edge of the road and would be, and is in the right of way if on the adjacent property at the corner. If they were going to, at some point, extend that sidewalk up, that retaining wall would have to be shifted to the property line. And
So
I don't
that
think-
guy, Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
so basically you're telling me that guy built out onto public property his yard with the retaining wall?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I don't know how the retaining wall got there, but that current retaining wall, and I think you can see it from there, or from the photographs too, is along the edge of the road, and it is in the right of way.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
so in the same token, the applicant showed a picture of a mailbox on his property. Is that mailbox sitting on his property or is it in the public right of way?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that mailbox is in the right of way and would be sitting kind of right where the attached sidewalk would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, sure thing, Bill. It looks like we have Commissioner Mooney has joined us online. I'm going to check in with legal real quick. He has his hand up for some comments, but James, Commissioner Mooney was not here when we started the meeting. Do we need to do anything procedurally here to have him join the fray? Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
We might get Mr. Mooney to state on the record if he joined the meeting before or after we
Right.
started to hear this item.
Is that correct? Yeah, I agree. Staff good? We'll check in with John.
What do you say?
Commissioner Mooney? Well, he had his hand up and now he doesn't. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll let John gets, oh, there he is.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney, how are you?
I'm okay. I apologize. I thought I was checking in early at 5:25, but since I'm in Arizona, they don't change time. I just checked in, so I can't participate on this agenda item.
Okay, very good. We'll catch up with you on the next one then. Okay, thank you, John. Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Danley?
So David, I believe what I think I heard you say was that an option would be instead of the sidewalk going all the way up towards the creek canal, whatever we're calling it, we can pull it back and terminate it short of that. And I'm assuming then when ACHD does rebuild that bridge, there could be a possibility of a slight meander in order to meet up instead of having to basically pull out portion of the slab that would be built. Is that what I heard you say?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is correct, is to basically not complete that entire street frontage as a half street section, but pull it back a distance of 16 feet or so, kind of shown here, and then leave that unimproved. And maybe that might allow room for them to accommodate the rise. I don't know what engineering their requirement for a new bridge.
Did follow up the 16-foot, where did
It's-
that come from?
That was, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, that was just me measuring off the aerial photograph. That's
Great.
all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore, please.
So on the corner, I think there was a photo that was shown, and I think this is a question for staff. There's a photo that was shown that has a power line right in the middle of the existing, the existing sidewalk turning onto Girard. There's a power pole right in the middle of that termination. Is that something, would ACHD move the power, if they were to redo the bridge and all that good stuff? And maybe they were doing the whole street or something, but would they move that power pole too? Is that kind of in the scope of something they would do?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, I guess if they ever did extend it around, they would have to probably move the power pole if the sidewalk is, and probably other utilities would probably have to get moved as well. I believe this is the photograph you're mentioning.
Yes.
Those utilities that are in the way would have to be adjusted so to get the sidewalk if that was going to happen.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
although I'd point out that you can see a power pole is kind of built around, or the sidewalk's built around it to the right.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure that the one to the left would need to get moved as much as it's just not clear from this photograph to me, because they've clearly poured the sidewalk around the one on the right. Thank you. That's all I got. Not a question. Sorry, boss.
Okay. You get it, Jennifer? Okay. All right. Good on questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and open up. Thank you, guys. We'll go ahead and open up this item for any public testimony. If you would like to testify on this item, the podium is free. And if there are no takers in person, we'll check in with folks online. Okay. All right. If you're online and would like to testify on this item, please raise your hand. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and close public testimony. At this point, the applicant typically has a few minutes for rebuttal of anything spoken during testimony. We didn't have any testimony, so you can certainly yield that time if you would like. Very good. Let the record show that the applicant has yielded their rebuttal time. And we will go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is SOS 23-26.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
move that we deny SOS 23-26 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Seha.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, Milt.
So, first of all, my general perspective on the argument that this neighborhood doesn't have any connectivity. The reason this neighborhood doesn't have any connectivity is for the last 100 years, people have been accepting this argument, right? So we have to think, like, we're making decisions now. There are sidewalks in the North End built in 1910, 1920. These decisions we're making now last longer than all of our grandkids, right? They last forever. We would have been much better off as a city if 100 years ago we'd required sidewalks in this neighborhood, but we didn't because it was a little bit more expensive, because there were trees in the way, because there were irrigation canals, but because Joe built a retaining wall out into this, and it's just a myriad of reasons. So from my point of view, that argument is just not a good reason to make an exception to our policy. Now, specifically with their argument, so that's argument number one. Argument number two is this retaining wall on this other property. The dude built his retaining wall in the in public land, public right of way. That can't be a good reason to exempt either him or his neighbor from complying with the law. So I don't think that's a good argument, right? That's what happens when we don't enforce sidewalk, curb, and gutter, is people's stuff starts to slide down into the public right of way, right? It creates drainage issues. It creates safety issues. Cars come around that corner. People are, by the testimony of the applicant, people are walking in the middle of the street, or at least, 8 feet over. That's not good. So I don't agree with that argument. The third argument is to me the best one, which is the canal and the bridge. But again, I would just say the city is okay with making some allowances to sort of fit everything in safely so that we don't have to press right up against that canal and that bridge and create what I think is kind of an unsafe situation. I personally think getting hit by a car is a lot more likely the way it is now than someone tripping and running, falling into the canal. That's just my personal view. So for all those reasons, I think we should require the applicant to move forward with the curb, gutter, and sidewalk, allow them to make some safety allowances for the narrow bridge, and then move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Milt.
I agree with the staff report and what Commissioner Gillespie shared. So I just, I live in a neighborhood with no sidewalks. There are sidewalks, but I would say half of the neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks. And for about a decade, some residents have tried to get continuous sidewalks on Collister. And we are now inching forward with that. On Taft, which does not have sidewalks and has a canal on one side, and there's a little very narrow section between Sycamore and Hawthorne, ACHD somehow has made it work. And we need, in that particular area, we need sidewalks. We need sidewalks in all of our neighborhoods. And so just because there aren't any sidewalks in that neighborhood doesn't mean that we shouldn't be constructing curb, gutter, and sidewalks so that folks can walk, jog, or bike. And then one last item. There is one development that was approved more recently on 29th south of Sunset, which is literally like just a section of sidewalk. And then there's a very tall, bright sign that alerts you that that's the end of the sidewalk. So there are options that can be implemented to address the concerns with the proximity to the bridge, or to the canal, I'm sorry. So I will be voting in support tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Seha.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Daly, please.
Point of order real quick. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I understand what's on the table,
Mhm.
because the motion made by Commissioner Gillespie, unless I missed something, does not specify what our staff stated about pulling that sidewalk 16 feet short of the ditch. Is that the intent of the motion?
Yeah, I think you're.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please go.
Yes, it is the intent, and I was simply picking up on David's language on the record, which I think is the city's position.
Okay.
So I don't think
So-
I didn't read the conditions as requiring that it goes all the way to the edge of the canal,
Right.
right?
Right.
We should probably make sure of that.
Yeah, I guess
that's
we'll check
David.
in with staff too. I mean, staff, do we feel like the discussion on the record here is aligned with the motion, or do we need to clarify that piece?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I would recommend, since it was a recommendation of denial, I didn't include any conditions. We don't usually do that with denials. But if you're going to require them stepping it back from the edge of from the canal and the bridge to provide that distance, then that would need to be part of the motion.
Okay.
So it's recorded
Mr.
there.
Chairman,
Yeah, Milt, please.
Mr. Mosier, since it was your idea, can you please provide that language for us right now?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I would recommend the language read something of complete Girard Street as a 33-foot half street section, stopping approximately 16 feet or whatever highway district would request, short of the bridge and the canal along the west property line.
Great.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, Milt.
I would amend my motion to add what David just said as a condition.
Very good. Thank you. And do we have a second from
And I'll second that.
Commissioner Sayah? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
I'll be in support of the motion. I think that the amendment in particular makes a lot of sense. I'll give you an example why. If I'm in a wheelchair or if I have a walker and I go to the terminus of a elevated curb without a way to get down to meander or go around that ditch, I think this makes sense. It also gives the highway district the flexibility in the future to do an appropriate meander. That's when it is appropriate, is to
If they
move
need
with a physical structure in the way of some sort or another. But I agree with Commissioner Sayha's point, is that curb gutter sidewalk is not necessarily just about today. It's about tomorrow. And Collister, you took the words out of my mouth, a perfect example. We're dealing with that and we continue to deal with that. And so it is about the next generation after that. Because if we don't get it, then everybody in this room pays for 100% of it. And that's part of the issue too. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Danley. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Torres. Yeah.
I just wanted to second what pretty much everybody has said. I also live in a neighborhood with limited sidewalks and that include blind corners where if you're not paying attention, you're at very great risk of getting hit by a car. And I think, the much greater risk, as Commissioner Gillespie said, is getting hit by a car, I think. And, I think we do need sidewalks in every neighborhood. It's important to do that when we can. And obviously the retaining wall is a problem and we can't do anything about that now, but I think we should start building for the future so that we don't look at this, we won't be doing it, but people don't look at this 100 years from now and say, why weren't there sidewalks in my neighborhood? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, we have a motion to deny with conditions to clarify direction for the applicant. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Again, we had a motion to deny by Commissioner Gillespie with the second by Commissioner Sayha. Will the clerk please call it?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, all right. Yep. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, little housekeeping. Commissioner Mooney can now officially join the party. Welcome, John. Is there anything we need to do for attendance there, staff? We're good now? Just, okay, excellent. All right, we're gonna move on then to item number 2. And this is CVA 23-23. Jason Martindale is the applicant. This was deferred from our February 5th meeting. The project address is 4809 West Albion Street. This is a variance to exceed the maximum fence height in the side setback on 0.18 acres in R3D zone. We're going to hear from Matt Dennis first with staff.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you is a variance request to exceed the maximum fence height within an interior side setback located at 4809 West Albion Street on 0.18 acres in an R3D multifamily residential with design review zone. General reminder that this application was submitted and reviewed under the purview of the Legacy Zoning Code. The variance request is not consistent with Boise City Code and does not meet the approval criteria for a variance. It is not supported by the Development Code, as no evidence was provided that would constitute an exceptional circumstance or an undue hardship that is associated with the property itself or the intended use of the property, as defined by Boise City Code. Rather, the applicant has stated that their need for increased fence height is in response to ongoing privacy and security concerns. Unfortunately, the applicant's circumstance regarding a civil matter is not considered to be unique to the property. The subject property is a regularly shaped lot with no topographic abnormalities or other irregularities that would constitute a hardship as defined by the Development Code. The existing 9-foot tall fence exceeds the maximum fence height, which is allowed within the R3 zone. and therefore would not conform with the established streetscape character of the surrounding neighborhood. As detailed within the project report, there are alternatives available to the applicant which would allow them to receive the increased privacy as desired, such as planting landscaping to screen the backyard or to install a privacy fence that is outside of the required 5-foot internal side setback. Further, the applicant pursuing litigation is the more appropriate resolution to this situation. Public comment was received from the neighbor that is adjacent to the proposed location of the fence, in which concerns were expressed regarding the location of the construction of the fence, citing the reduced visibility of the street from the driveway, exposed screws at eye level, and a lack of anchoring, which has caused the fence to fall as safety concerns. In conclusion, the planning team recommends denial, and I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Next one from the applicant.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Jason Martindale, live at 4809 West Albion Street. And Matt and I talked on the phone recently, had a good conversation. I completely understand his decision to deny this, because what we're asking for is outside the policy. But we have a very unique situation that we hopefully ends soon. So we're asking for the 3-foot extension. Our nightmare story started, my wife Megan in the back here, started August 2022 dealing with our neighbor. And we have a protection order against her for a year for stalking our children. And we also have a 6-month prosecutor probation for violating that protection order. So some of the things she's done, I've got some printed out pictures. I've also got some videos if we have time, but I don't know if we'll have a lot of time. Here's the protection order. Just some of the pictures we have is a picture of our neighbor putting up cameras. She watches our children in the backyard. We've put up extensions. They were just emergency extensions. They don't look great right now, but our plan is to make them look nice. That fence we saw earlier is now a brand new fence, and our plan is to make it match the fence and actually look good. But we put up these temporary extensions, and she would move the camera over and to continue to watch our children. Also in our side yard, she has put up cameras. She put up metal poles right along the fence line and put these cameras up pointing directly over the fence into our kids' window, our bathroom, and our windows as well. It's not looking down the line on her property. It's directly into our kids' bedroom. We've been dealing with law enforcement on this, and we're in a lot of those issues right now. We also have another picture of our neighbor standing on the irrigation box, taking a picture over our fence into our backyard. These are just some of the nightmares we've been through the past year and a half. And we've talked to the committee before, and some of the recommendations were to have the 6-foot setback, and then you can make an extension. That's a little awkward. If you can imagine that, trying to build something like that takes up your yard and it just looks funny. Also planting some plants that are tall enough to block the view. I've got 2 quotes one from Far West Gardens, one from Jordan's Garden Center. Both were to cover our 80-foot section, about a 9 or 10-foot tall plant would be $6,400 to $11,000, depending on what plant you get and what size. The maximum tree size that they had was 6 to 7 feet. They didn't have any already mature 10-foot tall plants. They said it would take about 3 years for those to grow. We have planted some bamboo plants in the back, but those are also going to take time to grow. Up to this point, we spent $10,000 defending and protecting ourselves against her through court, fences, lots of things. And it's really been a nightmare, and we've considered moving, looked at a bunch of houses that still could be an option for us, but we have such a great deal on our house that we don't want to go house poor trying to find a new house now. So that's that's part of it. With the fence extensions, we really don't want these extensions, and our plan is for them to be temporary. Hopefully this case that we have against her will end and she will leave us alone. Or we move. But our plan is to have those extensions up so she doesn't continue to watch our kids play. All summer long, they play in the backyard, and she's talked through her camera to our children. And we're trying everything we can to stop this. But our legal side, a lot of the opinion is that there's some sort of mental health issue there, and our law is more reactive than proactive, so it's hard to combat that at this stage in things. The extensions we have up now have greatly helped her harassment and protecting our kids. We eventually just put a line of extensions along our backyard fence so she can't see through any of the cracks. And so we blocked the camera's view, and it's also helped with her not talking to the kids through the fence. She still continues to harass us, but the extensions have helped all that. So, that's about all I have for now. I mean, I have some videos if you'd like to see them. They're pretty disturbing, but hopefully what I've told you so far might help.
Okay. I actually don't know if we can do, is it loaded right now? Do you guys have the videos? Okay. And Mr. Martindale, you have, four minutes of your presentation. If you
Sure,
feel
let's
that's
show
germane
'em,
to
huh?
your presentation.
Yeah, let's show them.
Okay.
Can you pull up C17?
Mr. Martindale, was that C17?
C17, yes. And this is a picture of our neighbor moving her camera between the extensions we have. This little area is a private area, storage area behind her shed. And this is where she felt comfortable to start harassing us a lot. So I kept calling law enforcement. She was throw stuff over the fence, almost hit our kids. So they said, you have to get some evidence. So that's why I put that camera up. Otherwise, we're not camera people. And then C9. This is sometimes she's out, and this is 2:48 in the morning. She's all out at all hours, shining her flashlight in her backyard. And you'll see here, she just got some sort of obsession with us. And then one more, A1. This will show you just kind of who we're dealing with. Could you start that back over? She calls out our kid's name. Boone is our oldest kid. Mother's Day weekend, we dealt with this for 2 hours while we had our 2-month-old. She sprayed us with the water hose over the fence, and she kept acting like she was defecating, calling out our kids' names. This is what we're dealing with, and the extensions have helped so far. I understand it's not in the policy, but that's all we're requesting from you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Martindale.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, we'll check in to see if we have anyone from the Central Bench Neighborhood Association present. I don't believe that we do. So we'll go ahead and open up this item for any questions by the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So, this is a question for staff. How did this variance application come up? And was there a code enforcement complaint or something like that that kind of came about to start this variance?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, not that I'm aware of. I was introduced via a pre-application conference. I think Mr. Martindale may be able to describe that, what that process was like.
Sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Martindale, help him with the process here.
So on 8/7/23, Chip Heffelfinger was, I guess, notified by our neighbor about the extensions, and I have the notice here that was put on our door. I called Chip and was just told him what our situation was, and he said he was ex-law enforcement and that we had detectives and neighborhood contact officers and victim witness coordinators that he could talk to if he needed more information. So he said he understands and that there's this variance process we could go through to try to get these extensions. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Danley.
Question to the applicant. I'm curious, any thought on shade sales?
Yeah, and when I talked to the committee, it sounded like even anything like that would have to have that 6-foot setback. You couldn't put them directly on the fence, is what my understanding was.
So staff, can we clarify on that? So if it was mounted on something, but it wasn't fixed to the fence, I mean, it's not a permanent structure though. It's as a shade sail, it can be moved. It can be taken down and up technically.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, advice from planning staff has remained consistent with any kind of, whether it's permanent or able to be moved due to the code compliance case that exists now. In order to, comply with that setback, then any kind of structure that acts as a screening wall needs to be set back 5 feet.
That's the setback.
Then the follow-up would be, how would arborvitae work then? How would a plant that works in the very same way, that's not movable, but yet is not, I mean, if it all grew together, it essentially would create a wall.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is correct. Landscaping does not, landscaping is not held to that same standard. So landscaping can be planted up to the property line. So that was one of the alternatives that was given by staff.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Very good. All right. We'll go ahead and open up public testimony on this item. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to testify on this item? The podium is free. Okay. And anybody online, if you'd like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, no takers there either. So we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Mr. Martindale, this is typically time for rebuttal from anything heard during public testimony. Like the previous application, there was no testimony, so you can certainly yield your rebuttal time if you'd like, or you have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like to use that.
Show some more videos. I don't really have anything else to say about it.
Okay, great. We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead then and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is item number 2, CVA 23-23.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore?
I move that we deny CVA 23-23 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second. Okay. Got a motion to deny with a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Gillespie. Jennifer, you want to start with some discussion?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So this is one of just the really hard ones. But ultimately, I agree with everything stated in the staff report. It's a kind of a civil matter as opposed to a land and planning and zoning matter. There's some alternates, the setback to get that height and things like that, because there are alternate kind of options available to achieve some level of privacy. And because, there are no unique conditions for topography and things like that that are specific to the property itself, are the reasons why I'm in support of the staff report's recommendation to deny.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. No other comments, Milt, as a seconder? Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Danley?
Man, I'm gonna support the motion because I feel like our hands are tied on this, and it's brutal. And I will say we didn't hear from the person who made the complaint, to be fair, just to get the other side of the story, but I have no reason to doubt what was said or presented. I really feel as though pursuing some sort of the shade sale process would make sense. I would encourage you to explore that and see what flexibility there might be, especially in our new code. I would imagine that they'd be a lot cheaper as well, and be instant. I mean, if they can put a post up inside their side of the fence that technically is a structure, that seems to me like that would be a code violation too. Right. So I think there's two things happening here, but I would encourage you to pursue that to the nth degree, because until July 5th is terminated, and hopefully whatever happens legally to resolve this the right way, maybe that's the way to go. I feel for you terribly, but I do agree that with the motion, because I think, again, our hands are tied on this.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Danley. Yeah, Mr. Martindale, I sympathize as well. I agree with all the statements by my fellow commissioners up here that, code's pretty clear. I hope that there's, another method, that maybe exploring the vegetation might be another option. I know it's more cost to deal with your situation, and for that we certainly sympathize, but the code's pretty clear, and I think we have a pretty clear directive, as far as that's concerned. So, so all the best moving forward. I'll go ahead and call the vote then. Again, this is CVA 2323, a motion to deny by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Gillespie.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye as well.
Moore,
Aye.
Mooney,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Aye.
Torres,
Aye.
Dome,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, take the temperature real quick. Everybody good? We'll keep on moving. One more. Okay, let's do one more. Then we'll take a little break. Let's see. Up next is item number 4. CUP 23-79 KM Engineering at 2730 West Airport Way. A conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment associated with a coffee shop on 2.96 acres in a C3D zone. And from staff, we're going to hear from Matt Dennis again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item before you is a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment associated with a coffee shop located at 2730 West Airport Way on 2.96 acres in a C3D service commercial with design review zone. A reminder that this application was submitted and reviewed under the purview of the Legacy Zoning Code. The applicant proposed to, the applicant proposes to demolish the existing drive-up financial institution in order to develop a new Starbucks drive-through. The proposal complies with the dimensional standards and use-specific standards for drive-throughs. The development code requires drive-throughs to be located behind the principal building. In this case, a majority of the drive-through lane will be located to the east or rear of the building in relation to Vista Avenue. There is a portion of the drive-through that is located between the building and Vista Avenue, but the applicant has proposed to buffer the drive-through lane and service window by use of additional evergreen landscaping and an extruded building facade, which acts as a screening wall from Vista Avenue. This site layout was chosen by the applicant because it provides a sufficient queuing length behind the building and allows for adequate pedestrian access to the building while retaining the clearance needed for the Marathon pipeline easement that exists on site, therefore ensuring the drive-through will not cause an increase of commercial traffic into neighboring properties. Planning staff finds that the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding uses and that the proposed design meets the intent of the codified screening requirement and the planning team is supportive of the site layout and screening techniques. Recommended conditions of approval are summarized on your screen. These include limiting the western vehicular access to a right-in, right-out only, incorporating detached sidewalks along Vista Avenue, reducing the total parking space count from 30 to 19 in order to comply with the maximum allowance of parking spaces, which is based off of seat count, and to coordinate with the Arts and History Department, as well as the Boise Airport to install public art near the intersection of Vista Avenue and Airport Way, the goal of which being to signify the importance of this intersection as a community gateway to the city of Boise. As conditioned, the proposal complies with the development code and is supported by multiple goals, principles, and policies within the comprehensive plan, as was discussed within the project report. The applicant has expressed opposition to 2 conditions of approval. These include complying with the maximum parking allowance by reducing the proposed parking space count from 30 to 19 and installing detached sidewalks that are a minimum of 10 feet in width that are separated by the back of the curb by a minimum of 8 feet. The applicant contends that the proximity to the airport induces demand for additional off-street parking and seeks a reduction in the width of either the landscape buffer or the sidewalk due to the existing slope adjacent to Vista Avenue. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I will stand for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman Schaefer and Commission. Connor Lindstrom with KM Engineering, 5725 North Discovery Way, Boise, 83713. Matt, you got my presentation? Great, okay. So, yeah, I'd just like to start with saying, yeah, on behalf of the property owner and Starbucks, we have this conditional use permit in front of you. It's been in the works for a while. We had a couple pre-app meetings with staff to work through the intricacies of the design, the queuing and so forth. And we're able to finally submit right before the code changed. Let's see here. So yeah, here we have just the vicinity map. And I know Matt went through this, but we have the green dot there showing where this Starbucks will go. Around the area, you have other businesses that exist. You have office space, hotels, you have the gas station, and the I-84 to the north. And then to the southwest is the Boise Airport, which, is the dominant use for this neighborhood in this area. Many of the businesses there rely on the airport and its activities. So as mentioned, we have the proposed restaurant or Starbucks drive-through coffee shop is 2,800 square feet. It's going to be accommodated by various seating areas, landscaping on the site, as well as pedestrian walkways and parking. So as I mentioned, and staff and us met multiple times about the site design, parking, and to our knowledge, the parking maximum was never brought up. So yeah, that's one thing that we wanted to see if we could get some additional parking spaces there. And as I go through here, here's the elevations. And yeah, with the parking, there's a specific condition that says the proposed development shall be limited to 19 off-street parking spaces. I have in the lower left-hand corner there, you'll see just across Vista, we have the Chevron gas station. I'm sure you're aware of if you've been to the airport. As flights come in, oftentimes it's slammed with parked cars. I was just there last week picking up my in-laws and at midnight, and it was totally full. And unfortunately, you know, if you wanted to go, let's say the Starbucks goes in, if you wanted to go get a coffee and park and drink your coffee, there could be concerns with, you know, those parking spaces being filled by others that are not even utilizing the Starbucks for the coffee. They're just parking there to wait, which is something that you can't really, you know, it's hard to enforce. So that's, you know, just shows how, you know, that parking lot there is full, and I could see that happening with the Starbucks for sure. I'd also like to mention in staff's report that they mentioned that we could add, we could reduce our parking, or we could add more seating inside. We have included outdoor seating, which is not included in that the 1.7 times the minimum that's allowed. So we haven't, let's see here, we have 24 outdoor seats there, as seen on the patio on these elevations. So we could see that there might be some more people there than just the, you know, 33 indoor seats that are proposed. In addition, from staff's report, they mentioned that they generally agree with the applicant's assertion of developing a commercial node that supports airport operations, commercial activity, and the I-84 travelers is compatible with the area. So, you know, what they're saying, though, what Matt's saying is their hands are kind of tied because we didn't include this increase in parking with our application submittal, and it wasn't noticed with the CUP. But if we knew that this maximum was going to be in place, which we missed in our review of the code, I guess, but if we knew that, we would have included it in our initial submittal and notice for it. So I guess that's where I'm relying on you guys, if you so wish, to allow us, you know, the increased amount of parking spaces. There are 30 proposed spaces, and 19 is what the code currently allows for. If I go back to the site plan, to have 19, we'd probably have to remove that whole southern parking area and maybe a couple of the spaces in the middle as well. So it might just be a little bit tight in there. You can see from other Starbucks and other coffee shops in the valley that these sites get a little congested. So I don't think additional parking would hurt necessarily. As I move to the next condition here, this is specifically states that the installation of detached sidewalks that are a minimum of 10 feet in width, separated from the back of the curb by a minimum of 8 feet, are required along Vista Ave. It mentions class 3 streets or trees and so forth. There's a couple images here that show, you know, Vista Avenue there. There's some significant slope, about 10 to 12 feet from the top of the existing sidewalk down to the property line. It's, you know, if we were going to have this, I guess, 18-foot area for detached sidewalk and the planter island, there's going to have to be some significant fill that's brought in. Currently, that's only a 7.5-foot wide sidewalk there, and it quickly drops off. So there's probably going to have to be, fill, potentially a railing. I don't know what that engineering will look like, but that is of concern and, you know, will be a burden for sure. You also, to the south towards the airport, if you cross Airport Way, there is that planter island, which we're not opposed to the planter island. It's more the width of the whole planter island plus the sidewalk. That planter island plus the sidewalk there you see is just to the southwest. That sidewalk is only, it's just under 6 feet. We went out and measured, it's 5 feet 10 inches. So something similar to that might align better with Vista Ave going to the northeast, and then as it ties into the overpass there going over the freeway, you know, I don't foresee there being planter islands up on the overpass, so it might, I don't know, it just doesn't tie in well going north either. So both things to mention, and we would like both of those conditions either to be removed or to be, maybe have another recommendation that we could hash out. I don't have anything else. Just like to say thank you to staff and Matt and his thorough review. He's helped us a lot through this application and this process. We believe that this Starbucks is going to be a great asset to the area. It is going to be, this gateway corridor as we go into the city, as folks, fly into Boise. We're totally amenable to the sculpture that, or, any kind of art installation that's going to go in. We think that'll be a great addition to the city in this gateway corridor. And we're definitely on board with landscape improvements, sidewalk improvements, and so forth. I just think there's going to be some tweaks that might need to be made. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. And we do have someone, should be online with the Starbucks team too, if you have any more really detailed questions that I might not be able to answer. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom.
Yep.
Okay. First, we'll check in with the neighborhood association. This would be the Vista? No. Airport. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just go to questions by the commission then.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So Matt, the question for the city and the applicant. So that the Vista frontage where the sidewalk is way up on top of the hill next to Vista, and then there's kind of a steep drop. That drop is there, I assume. So the question is that drop there because a Vista has to go up over the freeway. So that's a artificial grading at that point to create the overpass. Is that right? Like that's why that's there.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I can't confirm or deny whether that is.
It's all flat ground around there. So, okay. So you don't know.
I can say from what I know that there are not any existing permanent slope easements there. So,
right. And Matt, how steep is that slope? Do we know? It looked pretty steep in that picture, but those can be misleading depending on the angle. It looks pretty steep from the edge of the sidewalk all the way down to that fence.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, my understanding is about 7 feet, although Mr. Lindstrom may have a better
Do you know how
understanding of
much
that.
drop there is from, like if you're standing at the bottom, along that fence, is your head even with the edge of the sidewalk, or are you still looking up to that edge?
Commissioner Gillespie, and speaking with our engineer, he said that it was between 10 and 12 feet at the most northwestern point of that property on that corner. So you would not be able to see.
Right.
Up
So
on
it's a
top.
big,
Yeah. As to the actual percentage of slope, I can't speak to that. I'm not aware of that.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I can confirm through GIS that that grade change, judging off of topographic lines on the city's GIS system, is about 7 to 8 feet, directly adjacent to Vista Avenue.
I stand corrected.
Hmm.
But I don't know many 8-footers.
Mr. Chairman, I can keep going.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
So, Matt, I can't remember this part of the legacy code on parking maximums, but is there any criteria in the legacy code that gives us discretion or criteria to go over that parking maximum? I can't remember if there is or isn't, but a lot of times it'll say in the code, the planning director or the body can exceed the parking maximum if it finds A, B, and C. And are there any A, Bs, and Cs that we ought to consider?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, there is. So
I'm sorry, I just can't remember that part of that code.
That's okay. So the parking requirements for restaurants are based off of seat count. So one parking space is required for each 3 seats. So for 3 seats, 1 parking space. And those are long-term seats, which is why outdoor seating wasn't included in that. So that's just permanent seating. Outdoor seating is considered seasonal. So with 33 seats proposed, a minimum of 11 parking spaces were required. Minimum parking under the legacy code, a maximum parking can be, is 1.75 times the minimum, which would be 19. And then further, in order to exceed that maximum, a conditional use permit is is what that avenue would have been in the old code. However, due to the weird timing, that this legacy code no longer exists and no longer functions. So at that point, there's not really that avenue that would allow, that would require that legacy process, which required a pre-application meeting, neighborhood meeting, things like that. So that's why that there wasn't an avenue once this was submitted and the old code, the legacy code was retired.
Right.
That kind of retired the
Right.
ability to.
So if they did a new submission, it'd be under the new code.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Matt, what would the new code say about the parking maximum? I knew I was going to get in it. You don't know because it's the legacy code.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'll remind the commission that this is a legacy code item.
I know you're going to remind me of that, but it's also kind of a twixt in between. So Matt, so what you're saying to me is that the legacy code would apply the CUP criteria to the determination of whether they can exceed the parking max. And those criteria are basically, public benefit, doesn't harm surrounding uses, blah, blah, blah. The usual, the ones that are in this application, but this application just doesn't contain that request for a parking max.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that's correct.
All right.
The findings to exceed parking maximums in the old code, basically, like you said, no adverse impacts to neighboring properties. The additional parking is required due to unique site characteristics.
Right.
Additional parking does not harm the site circulation or pedestrian access.
Right.
The additional parking does not increase pedestrian travel to the pedestrian travel distance to the building. And finally, the additional parking does not cause a conflict between pedestrians and vehicles.
Right. Mr. Chairman. So Matt, if you were asked to apply those criteria to their parking request, can you, or will you decline to step us through what your finding would be? Like if we did apply those findings to this request, is it an adverse impact? Does it affect pedestrian access? Is there room on the site for it, et cetera, et cetera?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, the staff report conditioned, specifically as conditioned, the
number of parking spaces.
Right.
At
the number of
19.
parking spaces, and that number of spaces constitutes that internal site
Dialogue.
circulation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So there's several other kind of the similar use and specifically a similar Starbucks. And I'm thinking the one that I know best, which is the one on Broadway, has not that many parking spaces and is pretty similar. All of these different locations, they would be required to provide the same number of parking spaces. This particular use is not an exception. And I'm thinking that's one of the findings is unique characteristics of the use. That would be finding B for to exceed the parking maximum. But other locations, they still fall under this 3 seats to 1 parking space requirement, correct? With the maximum?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, that's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney, yes, please. Thank you.
a question for staff. Matt, a question for airport planning. What's the planning for parking cell phone lot? Obviously, the applicant's got a lot of concerns about that, implying that they're going to take care of the public's need for parking.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, the Boise City Airport provided agency comments, basically providing no opposition.
Okay, no opposition, meaning we don't know what their cell phone parking plan is?
It's that one aisle as you walk in.
Yeah.
Like 20 cars
It's
long.
full. It's full all the time.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Sorry, John. We're We're having a sidebar here, John. I apologize.
No, I've got it. So, Mr. Chair, I got another few questions about ACHD report. Page 257, Matt, I have a question about ACHD's wording. At the top of the page, they cite their policy, which requires a concrete sidewalk on both sides of our arterial streets. And then you go to the bottom of the page and they note that the applicant is not proposing any improvements. And then they say that meets policy. So my question is, I'm confused. The policy at the top of the page says they need sidewalk. The applicant's not providing it. And then staff's saying it meets policy. So I'm confused.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, the ACHD staff report included the recommendation, which is shown on your screen now, which is basically setting the required dimensions or the recommended conditions, I guess, if you will, for the detached sidewalk, and specifically stated that if the city of Boise requires detached sidewalk, I will note this is kind of a similar situation to, if you recall from last month, where we had a Bank of America drive-through come in, where although ACHD had a different recommendation at the time, a subsequent design review application will require, because a new design review application will be submitted under the modern zoning code, those streetscape standards will require arterials to have these dimensions here. So in remaining consistent with the CUP conditions of approval, the DR conditions of approval, and then ACHD, that's why this condition was included.
Okay, great. Mr. Chair, I got another policy question from the ACHD report.
Sure thing, John.
So Matt, on page 260, and when they get into site-specific conditions of approval from ACHD, they talk about this eastbound left turn lane, but that's not accounted for anywhere else. Can you explain why the city didn't pick up on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, would you mind providing a little bit more context as to which left turn lane?
Page 261 in our packet, site-specific conditions of approval number 1 is construct an eastbound left turn lane at the second driveway located 268 feet east of Ryan Street with barriers as determined by ACHD staff. But I don't see that anywhere else in our packet as far as a discussion item from the applicant or the city staff.
Commissioners, one moment while Matt pulls that up.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, normally I haven't, it says the applicant, one of our standard conditions of approval is you have to comply with all the ACHD conditions of approval. So it doesn't seem like either the applicant or staff thought that constructing an eastbound turn lane on Airport Way was very hard to do.
Right.
That's what I'm guessing, Crystal.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, just for clarity, I have the project report pulled up. What exactly, what page was that of ACHD comments?
This is page 261 in our packet.
It's our agenda package, page 261.
I think essentially, I'll jump in here. I think, John, what they're saying is that the second driveway entrance, the easternmost driveway entrance, they have to restripe or amend the roadway to extend the turn lane.
Right. Okay.
That matches, that meets the vista, right?
Yeah, you bet. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess question for the applicant then, that's not a problem for you, correct?
Chairman Schaefer, Commissioner Mooney. Correct. No, that is not a problem. And that's, I believe, if we were to pull up our site plan, I think that's indicated on there to have how the site's designed. There's the two access points. The western one's going to be right in, right out. The left, or the eastern one, will have be able to turn left into, so that would have a left turn lane naturally. There had to be restriping on Airport Way.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
No, please.
Sensing that there's going to be some compromise kind of kludged together, especially with respect to the sidewalks, can we ask the city or the applicant to pull up that site photo that shows kind of what's there and not, because I want to ask some questions So that was in somebody's presentation. Do, 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 do. Yeah, no, not that one. Whoa, go back. What? The diagram, the line drawing, that one. So this question to the applicant. So this is the site with 31 parking spaces.
30, I believe.
30, whatever
yeah,
the number
yeah.
is. So Airport Way is on the bottom of this picture. It curves into Vista. Vista then shoots up to the northeast. That's where that steep bank is and that little sidewalk perched up on top of it.
Correct.
And this is a question for you too, Matt. What would happen if we required the sidewalk improvements from where that side pedestrian crosswalk is, where Airport Way meets Vista? In this diagram, it's all the little rectangles. And then the improvements the city wants to the sidewalk, the bigger detach and the wider, then curve around and go all the way down Airport Way. Because what we really care about is that there's two big hotels down there. And it's those people walking around that are really the only people walking around. Whereas I'm wondering if the city, like, can you understand what I'm saying about where we require and where we say, okay, what's there is fine? Can you
Mr. Chair.
opine on the reasonableness of that point of view?
Definitely.
And
Mr.
then
Chair.
have the boss do it here. Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, the determination for whether detaching or attaching is based on the classification of the street.
Right.
So I don't know the classification of Airport Way
It's
off
got
the
to
top
be
of
a
my head.
collector.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
So in either case, the streetscape standards would be required with the subsequent design review application.
Yeah, and I get, Mr. Chairman, I guess what I'm saying is because of what I think of as like a problem in the topography, like in the ground itself. There's an issue on that Vista bank of like, do we really want to see a giant, a 7-8 foot high retaining wall where that fence is to make that space for that roadway improvement on Vista? Given that Vista's basically, they made it as wide as they possibly can already. So I'm just trying to probe your view on is that even feasible? Because I hate doing design from up here. I make a lot of mistakes. So is this a reasonable idea?
Yeah, Chairman Schaefer, Commissioner Gillespie, I see what you're getting at here. I think our stance is clear in that there are some significant topography changes there and on Vista, correct. And because of the way that, it slopes downward, there's, like you said, there's probably going to have to be some sort of retaining wall or something there that's going to hold that slope once it's widened. And therefore, your landscaping and the mural that's going to be added and the nice screening along where the driveway is going to be for the Starbucks is going to be even more hindered because of the widening on Vista. And so therefore we understand that the city and ACHD want this to be a nice gateway corridor into the city. And I think there are some ways around adding some landscaping and maybe having a detached sidewalk, but we just can get that a lot less wide than 10 feet. There might be room to have all of these items there. I don't know if that answers your question, Commissioner Gillespie, but that's the way we see it. I would also like to direct you to, like you mentioned earlier about the conditional use. If we would have originally applied to have an increase in parking spaces with the conditional use permit, we would have had to meet certain criteria to allow for an increase in parking. And as you mentioned, one of those items is that this has to be a unique site or unique characteristics. And I would say that the topography, for one, is unique, but also the airport and being close to the airport is unique enough that this would allow for that increased parking. And ACHD also mentioned in the report that there is a sufficient amount of parking spaces and pathways and site flow through here that they're agreeable to, as did the airport, because they didn't really have much to say. So with all that being said, I just think that, what we're proposing with the increase in parking spaces and the detached sidewalk that is significantly less width would be beneficial to all parties. But yeah, if that adds some clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
I have a series of questions I'd like to ask specific to the conditional use element of this, which is the drive-through. Because if it wasn't for the drive-through, this wouldn't be in front of us, correct? Okay. So I want to ask first and foremost, the airport owns this property. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Downey, that's correct.
And the airport is part of the city of Boise, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Downey, that's correct.
Okay. The city of Boise has gone on record as saying we desire and are working toward being climate neutral in 2035. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Downey, that's correct.
Does the airport have no idling zones all throughout it?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Downey, that's correct.
Okay. Your TIS says that there's going to be 1,500 plus vehicle trips generated. That means about half coming, half going. So about 750 vehicles that would enter your site on a day and 750 that would leave. Can you tell me about how many employees you think? Is it 25? Is that about, you think, over the course of a day?
I mean, Commissioner Danley, that sounds about right. I don't.
Okay, that's fine. It's ballpark. I know you can't get to it, but 725 customers per day. Would that sound about right?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, about how many of the 725 customers do you anticipate going through the drive-through? What's a percentage?
There would be a high likelihood of customers using the drive-through.
Do you have any kind of market analysis that tells you what the anticipation of the percentage would be for walk-in versus drive-through?
Yeah, we have our Starbucks representative online, Lisa Sunderland. I don't know if Lisa, if you're online, you can hear us.
What's typical for Starbucks if you don't have it for this site?
Hi, this is Lisa Sunderland. If you'd like me to answer this question, I can do that.
Yeah, Ms. Sunderland, please go ahead.
My name is Lisa Sunderland. I'm a consultant for Starbucks, and my address is 3904 Prado Drive, LaPorte, Colorado, 80535. For this is a unique site. Basically, and I understand the concern about idling cars. Most of the drive-through does not pull cars that are not already on your feeder roads, which would be Airport and Vista. They would be bypassed. They're not, like coming off the interstate. Occasionally they would. This site would be more for people that are coming to park, to wait, to go over to the airport. The building has been designed, and including there's 12 outdoor seating, kind of like a stadium seating, to make it so people can watch the airplanes come in. Also interior, which Connor did a great job, but there's actually an additional 12 stadium seats inside. So we have 45 seats, not 33. We can also increase the interior seating. That was just basically in designing this, that was an assumption. So we can increase the seating to be able to help support the parking that we're asking for. But as far as idling cars, you had a bank that was there to begin with. And you also have the bypass, the cars that are waiting at your lights. So as far as the drive-through, it would probably versus, walk up and people that are waiting for people at the airport, it would probably be closer to 50-50, if that helps with your question.
Okay, 50%. We'll go with 50%. So roughly about 375 vehicles per day. What's the average idle wait time in the queue?
So once the very first car, when it orders, it takes about 3 minutes to pick up your coffee and then leave. Once you get the queue started, the staff inside gets rolling faster. It goes down to order point to pick up 2 minutes. So you cycle through fairly quickly.
Okay, just doing some math. Perfect. Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the other thing is your electric cars too. So I just, to bring a point in too, is that there are a lot more electric cars that do not idle, that do not produce exhaust anymore. And I think there's a mandate to have the majority of, I think it's by 2030, to have the majority of the cars on the road be electric and not gas fueled or diesel.
Okay, fair enough. With regard to I'm not going to answer questions. It's not my job to do that. So I'm going to just continue. I guess with regard to staff, any general thoughts on this? This is a city-owned property. We have obligations and we have commitments to try and reduce carbon footprint. And by 2035, we have a drive-through establishment, which is the subject of this conditional use permit on one of the pages with respect to, I think it was written by you, sir, which says that that Starbucks is committed to reduce and cut carbon footprints by half by 2030. So in 6 years from now as a company. But I guess that's the question I'm trying to get to is how is this consistent with our stated objective of cutting carbon and greenhouse gas emissions?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, those are all excellent points. Regardless, though, the development code specifies very clearly what the minimum maximum parking space count is. So, for all the reasons stated, city staff recommends that the maximum parking allowance be adhered to as conditioned.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
I think the question Chris was maybe trying to get at, Matt, was in a C3D zone, which I think this is what this is, are drive-up uses permitted?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, thank you. The drive-throughs are allowed within the C3D zone only by conditional use permit.
Which is why this is here. So, Mr. Chairman, so Matt, the criteria we have to use for evaluating this in the legacy code doesn't specifically mention carbon emissions, as I recall.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that's correct, yes.
Matt, would you mind pulling up page 164? Packet? Do you have that handy? It's just a, broader oversight plan.
Mr. Chair, is this the right page?
Yeah, kick back a few more pages. I was getting to the overall aerial shows. No, the aerial, keep going right there. That guy, that dude. Okay. So let's get back on the sidewalk on Vista question, grading aside, because we've got engineers in the room. We can figure out how to grade it. It'll happen. I just want to confirm though, Matt, so the parcel, I'm going to call it a parcel. I don't think it's a parcel, but across Vista is an undeveloped area of land, which I believe is all owned and administered by ITD. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, very good. And then is the city's contention here with the comment for the requiring a detached sidewalk on Vista, they would essentially have to detach the sidewalk for the length of the parcel that they own. So you're going to have to keep the northernmost section of attached sidewalk north of the parcel line that's currently existing on Vista Avenue, correct?
Mr. Chair, it's a weird shaped lot. I would agree, yes.
Okay. So the condition as it reads in the report right now, essentially we rebuild, let's say 2/3 of the sidewalk on Vista and then return back to the 6-foot attached sidewalk that's on the northern piece there. Is that right? 6 foot? Small. It's narrower than 10 feet, correct? Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that we were on the same page there, and how that might look from a aesthetic standpoint.
Mr. Chair, I think that's a good point just because, the applicant would only be required to install street improvements that are adjacent to that right of way that are, obviously on the property. So I think that that's a valid point, yes.
Okay, very good. I guess too, then while we're on that same subject too, Matt, can you refresh my memory? I don't recall, oh, it was an ACHD condition saying a 10-foot detached, correct? It was a 10-foot pathway in ACHD's report, is that right?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. That's also echoed by the streetscape standards as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
And Commissioner Moore.
one last question. So in the zoning code or the legacy code, the parking reduction and waiver to exceed maximums, the findings to exceed the maximum parking, are those are and statements. Those are not or statements, they're and. So all of them must be true in order to find that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, that's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We make it, team? We're good on questions? Okay, all right, okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to public testimony. If you'd like to testify on this item, podium is free. Okay, no takers. If you're online and would like to testify, please go ahead and raise your hand. I guess get her hand up, now it's down. Okay. All right, looks like, again, no testimony on this item as well tonight. So we'll go ahead and close public testimony. At this point, of course, now it's time for applicants to have a few minutes for rebuttal. Nothing to rebut from testimony. Would you guys like to yield that time or do a quick one for us?
Chairman Schaefer, I don't have much else to say. I think I've made my point clear. I guess since Lisa is part of the Starbucks team, does she have, if she wanted to add something, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if you have anything, Lisa, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, now's your time.
I think you should be, no technical issue here. Hang on. I think we're good. Ms. Sunderland, go ahead, please.
Sorry about that. No, we very much appreciate the committee's time, and I think both Matt and Connor have done a great job. We feel that this site for Starbucks would be a great partnership for the city of Boise to help alleviate some of the parking issues with waiting for the airplanes to come in and for people to be there, and also being mindful that we are trying to meet your code as best we can with the topography, which we've talked about. Second, there is which I think everybody had already talked about, was the site was designed this way because there's a very large gas easement running through it, which prohibits placement of the building up against the street. So I think that's all I've got. Sorry.
No, thank you, Lisa. And I like to piggyback on her point too, along that vista frontage along the western property boundary. After we submit our application, Matt had brought up that, there could be potential for those queuing vehicles shining their light up towards Vista Ave, which I think the topography probably handles that enough, but we were amenable to add additional evergreen trees. So, come winter time when the leaves drop, you'll have some additional trees there for buffering to the street. So it just shows that we've been working with staff, that we are amenable to adding landscaping and so forth. So with that, I'll stand for any last questions you might have.
Okay, I think we're all good there. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, this is item number 4, CUP 23-79. The hot seat. Don't forget, we have Mr. Mooney online as well with us.
Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
permission to not make a motion, but to say where I'm leaning.
What's on your mind? Permission granted.
Since people are loading.
Yeah.
I'm I'm sort of indifferent on what we do on the parking, 19 or 31. I think the applicant's right. I think there is a lot of funky parking issues because of cell phones and people waiting and Uber and everything down around the airport. I can go either way. I don't feel that strongly about it. With respect to the sidewalk, especially along Vista as it works up to that, to the overpass, as I read the condition 3 now, it requires 18 feet and then ACHD wants another 2. I think there's probably a 5-foot attached sidewalk up there now, maybe 6, or we said 5'10". So we're talking about extending that sort of a level surface area, right? Needing to build up that slope to create, like another 15 feet of space up there. I just think that's not necessary and not real helpful. There's already a sidewalk there. They're going to build sidewalk on Airport Way that meets the city's requirements. So I would let go of condition 3, which is that Vista issue, or I would modify it so it's narrower. So right now it says 10-foot width, 8 foot of, setback, right? So right there's 18 feet. If we could get that down to 10 somehow, I think it'd be a lot easier. Or leave it the way it is. So that's all I got.
All right. Thanks, Milt. I see that Commissioner Mooney has his hand raised, so I'm going to call on Commissioner Mooney.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Gillespie on the Vista sidewalk issue. On the parking issue, I think I disagree, primarily because Commissioner Danley's comments about this is the city's property, and their cell phone parking plan ought to be part of this plan. And for them to not have a plan on the airport property itself seems to be a little short-sighted, and counting on commercial interest parking plan seems a little outlandish in my view.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Gillespie.
Ready to make a motion.
Thank you, John.
I'm going to just take a crack.
Take a crack, Milt.
I move that we approve, where am I? Number 4, right?
Yeah.
Approve CUP 23-79 with all the terms and conditions of staff report with the following changes. That we amend site-specific number 3 to read the installation of a detached sidewalk that are a minimum of 6 feet in width and separated from the block of the curb by a minimum of 5 feet are required along Vista Avenue. And I do want to, if someone's smart enough to know if that leaves enough room for class 3 street trees, that would be helpful. And I can't remember because Elaine Clegg is not here.
It does not.
So that 5-foot wide, how wide does the planter need to be for class 3?
I believe it is 8 foot minimum.
All right. So I'll just then, my motion will amend site-specific question number 3. Instead of a minimum of 10 feet in width, it'll say 5 feet in width and leave the rest of in the very first line unchanged. So I'm basically trying to chop out 5 feet from that Vista rigmarole.
Okay. So you're going to a 5-foot sidewalk.
Yep. Okay. And an 8-foot
planter.
What do you call it?
Planter.
Planter block. Because of you.
You're welcome.
That's my motion.
I have a motion to approve.
So it leaves parking at 19.
But yeah, motion to approve. Amending condition number 3 to a 5-foot sidewalk in lieu of a 10-foot pathway. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second from Commissioner Torres. Okay, got a second. Go ahead, Milt, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it. I just think I kind of agree with the parking. I could go either way. But I think to require a pretty massive reconstruction of that bank for an area that I just don't see a lot of pedestrians wanting to walk over the overpass.
Okay. Any other discussion? Thanks, Mel. Any other discussion? John, please. Your
Nothing,
hand's
man.
up. Did you want
Oh, no, I forgot to lower it.
to put your hand down, John?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
Yeah, for the generally, I generally agree with the parking. It sounds like it's tied to the number of seats. So if you have more seats, you have more parking spaces. So based on, 45 seats, you'd have 26. So you can kind of get there with more seats. But also thinking about, we're kind of trading parking space, landscaping for parking spaces when we increase this, because the alternative is to provide more landscaping. So what we're doing is we're trading landscaping for parking spaces. It's just the reality of what we're doing. And, to Commissioner Danley's point, I mean, if we're thinking about, the carbon goals and all of that stuff, does that meet carbon goals and, the convenience and the betterment of the public, which is one of the conditions. So I'm in agreement with that for those reasons. For the sidewalk, I'm kind of on the fence. I see the intent. I think the confusion for me is it seems like ACHD provided two options, which was one, leave it attached and just leave it be, or do the 10-foot. So this would be different than their standards. And I guess that's I'm not materially opposed to it, but also not a civil engineer. So those are just that's kind of my 2 cents. I'm generally in favor of the motion, just maybe a little bit more clarification for.
Mr. Chairman,
Chris, please.
it probably doesn't come as a surprise, but I will not be in support of the motion. I don't understand how we can approve this, given the stated objectives of the city of Boise, of which the airport is a part of it. The number one key principle, according to our own website for Blueprint Boise, is environmental stewardship. How is a drive-through establishment that is going to be emitting by the applicant's own admission over 1,800 minutes a day, 12 straight hours of emissions every single day of operation? How does that work with health, safety, and general welfare, which is part of the conditional use application? The neighboring property is a hotel where people are staying. The people who are working there breathing this in. We've tunneled it because of the shielding, ironically enough, right? How is this applicable to a gateway corridor with unique design? That's another question I would love to know. How is a drive-through establishment with now a request for more, 50, 60% more parking stalls than is required by code? How is that unique and innovative as part of our gateway corridor requirements? I don't think that any of this is consistent. So if the objective of the company is to in fact reduce carbon footprint, great, make it an establishment that's a walk-up. I have no doubt that what is being proposed, I can totally see the market value of that. But as per what was stated earlier with the former use of this being a bank, that bank was built well before the city established many of the objectives that are in our plan. So things change, times change. We have a different issue now. It's very different than when that was built in the 1980s. So I don't see any of this as being consistent, and I can't approve it as the motion is stated.
Okay. Great points. Thank you, Chris. Commissioner
Mr.
Sehat?
Chairman, I'm struggling with the sidewalk. Yeah, I'm struggling with the sidewalk piece. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote at the moment.
Okay. Very good. All right. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Oh, did you have something, John?
Yeah, I'm in support of the motion. I think you asked, I think the second was from Commissioner Torres. I chimed in as well, if it matters. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Danley's points, though, because this is probably our last time to take advantage of not in accordance with the comp plan. And environmental stewardship is number one, and the city states right in our comp plan, take the lead in demonstration of sustainable design and development. And if this is their property, as I already stated about the parking plan, I'm a little disappointed in our city's coordination on what could have been a better application.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, yeah.
I just like to point out that who owns the property that is the subject of a permit application is something that I personally do not think we should consider. I think it takes us down a road that, we wouldn't do that for any other application, right? So I think it's wrong to apply one set of standards to, say, city-owned property and a different set of standards to a privately owned property, because then we're going to get into all kinds of difficult distinctions around landowners. And nowhere in the code or the comp plan does it talk about that. So I just think that's flat out something that I won't do. And I would encourage you not to do that. If you think that the drive-in here doesn't meet certain parts of the code or the comp plan, then that would be true no matter who owned the parcel. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Good points. Good points. I'm going to take a step back real quick. I think it looks good. I appreciate the site design. I appreciate the fact you're saving 23 trees. I think that building architecture is actually quite nice. So kudos there. I like Milt mentioned earlier, I'm kind of on the fence about the parking, right? Like 19, 30 to me doesn't matter. Site actually works really well at 30. I'm fine with the motion that we have right now at the 19. I am, however, leaning towards denial because I don't like the sidewalk condition. If only because, we talk about, designing from the dais. I feel like that's what we're doing with this application. Even going to an 8-foot separation and a 5-foot detached sidewalk, there's going to be a lot of engineering required and a lot of retaining walls and a lot of things we were just talking about as far as construction needs and sustainability and all of those factors as well. 99% of the time, I'm on board with a detached sidewalk, right? It's absolutely the right thing to do from a pedestrian perspective. In this condition, or in this situation, we also would want class 3 trees, which are great for the environment and air quality and stormwater uptake. The next point, though, on that is that we're talking about, 200 feet of property line that in the whole stretch of Vista from when you leave the north side of the interstate to the south side of the interstate, this is the only place you're going to have a detached sidewalk. You have an outlier detached sidewalk in your gateway corridor from the airport, right? And there's really no option for, unless they just go and completely rebuild Vista Avenue from the north side of the interstate to the airport, that parcel across Vista is not going to develop. It's just ITD, holding property, right? So in order to really make that a gateway corridor and to do it the right way, I think you have to look at the whole length of the overpass from the north side of the interstate to the airport. I think detaching the sidewalk in this condition by itself, not only, you can't even get all the way to the crossing of the on-ramp to the interstate. You still have an attached piece of sidewalk north of this parcel. So to me, it just sort of throws the whole aesthetic off, detaching it, in addition to all of the engineering and the walls and the construction required to make it happen. So it's tough to say no to the motion because I like the project as a whole, but I will say I am going to be voting no on the motion because of the sidewalk condition. So that's where I stand right now on things. And we have talked a lot about this sidewalk and a lot about the site.
Let's
so
vote.
I think we'll go ahead and vote if that's okay with you guys.
Because then we can recycle
Correct.
the motion if it doesn't pass.
All right. So we've got a motion to approve with an amendment to condition number 3 as discussed. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
No.
Danley,
Nope.
Moore,
No.
Mooney,
No.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
No.
Torres,
Yes.
Don. 6 opposed, 2 in favor, motion dies.
Okay. Back to the drawing board, folks. Milt had his shot. Who's taking the next stab?
I mean, I'll do it. It's obvious.
Milt.
It's not very hard.
Milt can do it. It is.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, Milt.
I move that we approve CUP 23-79 with all the terms and conditions of the staff report except that we delete condition 3.
Second.
Okay. New motion by Commissioner Gillespie to approve, striking condition 3, and the second was by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion?
I have none.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
No.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Great. All right. Thank you guys for your patience. Appreciate it. Well done, everybody. Okay. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 8:10. Okay, look at that. 8:10. We're back and at it. Okay. Was that Crystal? Good? Okay.
First official hearing of the modern.
Yeah, I think this is the first. It's quite an honor for for our friends from Kimley Horn. They get the first hearing under the new code. Right? Right? And Jesse, congratulations. You get the first hearing of the new code. Have you been waiting for this moment?
Yeah, I was told I needed to prepare a song and dance. However,
Yeah.
I did not do that. So
Okay.
Directly defying me.
We could maybe you save the song and dance for the last hearing of the legacy code. How about that?
I'll probably have that too.
Okay. All right. I believe we're at item 7. Is that right? Okay. And it's CUP 24-3, Kimley Horn, 711 North Curtis Road, a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing medical facility on 5.25 acres in an MX1 DA zone. And Jesse Lyle from staff is up.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is CUP 24-3. This is a modification to a conditional use permit to expand an existing medical facility located on 5.25 acres at 711 North Curtis Road in an MX1 DA zone. This property is located at the southwest corner of Curtis and Emerald, and this property is, or the proposed addition is along the Curtis Road frontage. And congratulations, this is the first application to be heard under the modern zoning code.
Woo.
The original hospital was approved in 2017, and the applicant proposed to construct an approximately 14,400 square foot addition to the existing structure, which consists of 20 additional patient rooms, a dialysis suite, and parking and landscaping improvements. The proposal is consistent with the development agreement, which was also modified in 2017. This proposed addition is 1 story and will blend with the existing building design. And as outlined in the project report, the proposal is under the threshold to be heard or held to the form-specific standards of the MX1 zone. The MX1 zone has a maximum building setback requirement of 20 feet along all street frontages. The setback is measured to the ultimate location of a detached sidewalk with a landscape buffer. The streetscape along Curtis Road is improved with 5-foot detached sidewalks and 8-foot landscape buffer. A portion of the proposed building is located 20 feet from the existing sidewalk, with the rest located 45 feet from the sidewalk. The proposed addition provides a continuation of a hallway in the existing building, which was designed with a future expansion in mind and met all setback requirements when approved under the legacy zoning code. The applicant has provided modulation on the building facade to meet a portion of the maximum building setback and has provided enhanced landscaping adjacent to the portion of the building located 45 feet from the back of sidewalk. Additionally, a redesign to fully meet the setback requirements may hinder the use of the building as a rehabilitation center. As proposed, the portion of the building adjacent to Denton Street is located a maximum of 25 feet from the existing attached sidewalk, which is 5 feet outside the allowed 20-foot setback of the zone. Additionally, the streetscape standards of the MX1 zone require 5-foot wide detached sidewalks with a minimum of an 8-foot landscape buffer along all local roads. A condition of approval will require the applicant to provide detached sidewalks to comply with the streetscape standards of the zone. The installation of these detached sidewalks will also allow the building to meet the setback requirements of the zone, as setbacks are measured from the back of the detached sidewalk. And as conditioned, the applicant is meeting all landscape requirements of the zone, and their plans will be further refined during design review. The applicant is proposing to add 41 new parking spaces for the total shown on the screen. A condition of approval will require the installation of 5 EV-capable spaces as required by the development code. And another condition of approval will require the applicant to maintain or replace the required 16 bike parking spaces and provide additional long and short-term spaces as required for an expansion of this size. So in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. My name is Zane Cooper. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're located at 110 West Idaho Street, Suite 210, 83607, Boise, Idaho. I'm here on behalf of Encompass and St. Alphonsus to discuss the rehabilitation hospital expansion. The applicant team includes myself. This is the first of the modern zoning code and my first time ever presenting in front of a planning commission. Just recently graduated from Boise State, so I'm excited to be here. With me is some members of my team, Brandon McDougald and Nicolette Womack. We also have some individuals online that can answer any questions that may come up as well.
Okay.
So as staff stated, our site is located at 711 North Curtis Street, or North Curtis Road, my apologies. 5.25 acres. It was originally built in 2019 under CUP 1760. It is adjacent to West Emerald Street, North Curtis Road, and West Denton Street. The future land use map designates the site as a mixed use zone. And the zoning is a MX1 with the development agreement, which is not on here, but mixed use neighborhood with development agreement. Our expansion plan proposes approximately 14,326 square feet of new construction and 182 square feet of renovation. As staff stated, 20 accessible single occupant patient rooms will be added, 4-bay dialysis suite as well, a courtyard and enclosed walkway connection. The enclosed walkway connection is shown in red on the site plan to the right, and the expansion area is highlighted in yellow. Per staff, and the expansion requirement for parking spaces is 24 with 1 ADA spot. We are proposing 41 spaces with 2 ADA spots. These are elevation drawings for our plan. This will probably be discussed more in a design review application or process, but we're more than happy to discuss it tonight, and I have a very knowledgeable team that can answer any of your questions. So the staff report designates a design review application, 5 EV capable parking spaces, bicycle spaces, which 2 short-term and 1 long-term, and then detached sidewalks on Denton Street. We are more than happy to work with the 3 first ones, but we would like to discuss the detached sidewalks on Denton Street a little bit more with you all today. So currently to the west, we have attached sidewalk, and then to the east side, we have we have attached and then detached going up North Curtis Road. We are proposing that we stay with what staff has recommended and go with the detached on the east side. However, we leave attached on the west side. Our justification for this is the landscaping on the west side, as seen in the picture below, is beautiful. It has a lot of growth already there. It also has a permanent or existing wall behind there. And sorry, is it a side button for a laser pointer? Okay. Sorry.
On my left.
Yes.
The west side.
Yes.
My right. The east side.
Yeah, Chairman Schaefer, Commissioner Gillespie, that's correct. With that being said, the landscaping is beautiful. It might be costly to remove that portion, as well as leading to potentially a lower mitigation for that because the one-to-one match of a caliper tree, those could be 3 inches, and that could be difficult to plant back in. Anything we do plant may not last as much as what is currently existing. Additionally, West Denton Street ends in a dead end, and it has a roundabout in the corner. If I go back a couple of slides. Okay. To the west side is a roundabout, and being consistent with the objective of a detached sidewalk and mitigating any sort of conflict with pedestrians and vehicles, it makes sense for North Curtis Road to have that detached sidewalk leading into West Denton, given that it is a minor arterial. However, West Denton Street itself is a local road, and it will have much less traffic on that road. So we would propose that the approval of the conditional use permit application is approved tonight, but with an update to condition number 5, stating the applicant shall provide 5-foot wide detached sidewalks with a minimum of 8-foot wide landscape buffer with the required street trees east of the service drive on Denton Street, approximately 150 feet west of the Denton Curtis intersection. With that, I stand for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. First, we're going to check in with the Neighborhood Association, and then we'll go to questions. Okay, thanks. Do we have anyone from the Liberty Park Neighborhood Association present? Don't think that we do. So we will go ahead to any questions by the commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Glassby.
So for Jesse, so the applicant's proposal to keep the attached sidewalk on the western portion of Denton, I think I said that right. Would that would mean that does that mean that the proposed development then has a problem with the maximum setback? Because you said the detached sidewalk on Denton helps solve that problem.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that is correct. So the maximum setback for the MX1 zone is 20 feet, which that detached sidewalk would help solve that problem. However, the maximum setback is for the building and there's no maximum setback for parking, if that gives a little more clarity.
Okay, so we're talking about just the detached sidewalk is really, so that's where I'm a little bit, so that's the picture on my left. And so all that that giant landscape buffer is just a parking, not building. So it's just gonna, okay.
They're proposing attached
Yeah,
sidewalk
sorry.
as parking.
So
adjacent to parking.
it's that detached sidewalk that they're proposing on the east side of Denton solves that setback problem with respect to the new building and Denton.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct.
Sorry, thank you. I'm a little bit confused.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So for the attached side, the sidewalk that's there right now, it looks decently new. Was it part of approvals back in 2017, 18, 17, 19?
Mr. Chair,
Wow.
Commissioners, I believe that sidewalk was constructed with some Denton Street improvements. I don't know if it was constructed with the subdivision as a whole. Some of those improvements were, but some of them were constructed with the building itself.
Okay, so Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So that sidewalk may have been constructed before this building went in place. And then because it was, for some reason, it was approved, the building with the DA was approved with an attached sidewalk along Denton. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the building was approved with the sidewalks that are existing.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
So why, I understand the building side, I understand like the eastern side of that drive aisle or that access point. I understand why that would be detached because that helps the maximum setback thing. But why the requirement for deviation from the, I'm assuming there's a site plan attached to the DA. So why would there be a requirement to deviate from the site plan for the DA? Am I getting the order of operations correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think I can provide a little bit of context to
Okay.
set the stage. So the Emerald Station subdivision was approved before 2017. I do know that, with some of those street improvements as seen. In 2017, the rehabilitation hospital was approved with a DA modification. And that is where the site plan comes in for the DA. And then currently with our modern zoning code, the MX1 zone requires detached sidewalks with an 8-foot landscaper and a minimum 5-foot sidewalk along local roads. And so that is where that condition comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
I got some questions for Mr. Cooper. I have a series of them from you, Mr. Cooper. I'm just kidding. I have no question for you. Great job. You gotta make me walk over.
All right. Okay. I think we're good on questions. I guess while we got you up, Jesse, thoughts on their proposed alternative to condition number 5?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I do think that the most important part is to get that detached sidewalk. It does help solve a lot of those problems along the building area. It does appear that the sidewalk is in good condition, that there is existing landscaping. I do think that's something that can be taken into account by the commission as this is a modification. However, the development code does call for the detached sidewalk.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I do have another question
No,
for
yeah,
Jesse.
please.
So Jesse, so we've clarified that the attached part that the client wants to keep is adjacent to a pretty wide landscape buffer and then a parking lot. If the applicant ever comes back and wants to put a building where that parking is, then the city could go back and require a detached sidewalk. Is that correct? Because it'd be a change to the CUP and we could then put in, so this isn't sort of the way St. Al's operates, right? I don't see this as like a forever decision in this particular case. So just think about like if they come in and they put a building where that parking lot is running along Denton or something, then the city at that time could go get that detached sidewalk.
I don't know if there's a question in there for you, Jesse, but feel free to.
No, I'm just telling it to you.
I got you.
All right.
Okay.
If they put a building there, they have to get a CUP, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if the applicant was to come back and modify the site plan again, propose another building addition, they would have to come back for a CUP modification.
There we go. Playing by the process.
I win Jeopardy.
I like it. Okay. Commissioner Seha.
Mr. Chairman, Jesse, I have a question on the new code. So the new code specifically calls out detached sidewalks. And that is that's the principal reason for that in your findings.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the MX1 streetscape standards do call out detached sidewalk, differing widths based on a local street or a collector arterial, but that is the basis of the condition.
The reason why I bring this up is because the city council is going to be assessing the code every 12 months or so. And the way that I view it is that we stay within our boundaries. Because I feel like that's the only way the city's actually going to know whether or not what's written in code is working.
Fair enough. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Daly.
just to
Commissioner
echo
Cosby.
Commissioner Sea's comment on page 243 of the new zoning code, it specifically says detached sidewalks shall be required on both sides of all arterial and collector streets identified in the HHD master plan. So what is Denton? It's not an arterial, but is it classified as a collector? Or a
Mr. Chair,
local?
Commissioners, Denton Street is a local street. However, the streetscape standards that require the detached sidewalk come from the MX1 specific
Aha.
streetscape standards within the zoning
New
district
code.
itself. I believe that's 11-2 is that chapter.
Okay, are we
good?
No, I didn't know you had a hard copy. Look at that.
Trying to figure out the new code.
Okay, good on questions, gang? Okay. All right, thanks, Jesse. Thanks, you guys. We'll check in, see if anybody would like to testify on this item. Man, I don't think we've had anybody testify tonight. We've had basically no one rebut. I just jinxed it. Anybody online? If you'd like to testify, please raise your hand. Very good.
Page 26.
Public testimony is closed. If you guys would like to rebut, please do so. If not, you can yield your time. Great. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, this is item number 7, CUP 24-3.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that item number 7, CUP 24-3, a modification to conditional use permit located at 711 North Curtis Road, be approved the terms and conditions of the staff report with the exception of item number 5, which be stricken, and the existing sidewalk be permitted to remain.
Are you,
Point of information, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
I think I have the same
So-
information.
The applicant actually wanted a detached sidewalk for part of Denton.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, the
yeah.
two-part. Let me correct that
Right.
then. Okay. So same motion, item number 7, modification with terms and conditions. So the western portion of Denton be permitted to remain in place and the eastern portion be detached as per number 5. So in this instance, the number 5 be modified to read the western portion of Denton from the driveway to the terminus of the street. Would that work for the motion?
How about the portion adjacent to the proposed parking lot remains attached?
Okay.
The portion east of the driveway adjacent to the proposed building be detached.
Even better. Okay, so that item number 7 be approved with the number 5 in the staff report to read that the portion of the sidewalk nearest the building be detached and the portion of the sidewalk near the parking lot be attached along Denton Street. Close enough?
Yep.
Okay.
I think we get it.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Mr. Daly?
Yeah, I'll be pretty quick on this. The purpose of a detached sidewalk is buffering, especially on arterials and collectors. It's a local street and it's not a through street. So in this instance, we also have a pretty significant landscaping that if removed, I would argue would actually lessen the effect of the traffic calming that was intended to be resulting from that landscape. So the condition of the sidewalk is in good shape too, I think, as Commissioner Gillespie pointed out. Should this come back to us at a later date with a structure, at that point, then we'll talk again. But the detaching coming off of Curtis makes perfect sense to an attached for a short distance on a very low volume, low speed street makes perfect sense, and I have no issue with it.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Any other comments? No? You guys good? Okay. Commissioner Mooney's nodding. I will be supporting the motion. I've always liked the landscape design of this site. I appreciate also how the hospital has actually maintained it. I think how it's intended to be maintained. So I appreciate that as well. So it stinks that part of that's going away, but that's the world that we live in. So I also appreciate the thought process towards the sidewalks and that discussion. So I'll be supporting the motion. Okay. Okay, go ahead and call the roll. Again, we have a motion to approve With condition number 5 amended per discussion, the motion was by Commissioner Danley. The second was by Commissioner Moore. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Dome,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Very good. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for your patience tonight, too. All right. Last item. Item number 8, SUB 24-2 and SUB 24-3. Gardner, Vines, and Taffy Downs subdivisions. Addresses are 12371 and 12553 West Goldenrod Avenue. 2 preliminary and final plats for 2 residential subdivisions on 13.1 acres in an R1B zone. First plat is SUB 24-2, consists of 13 residential buildable lots and 8.2 acres on 8.28 acres. And the second plat is for Taffy Downs, and it is 12 buildable lots on 4.82 acres. And Jesse is up.
Good evening. Welcome to the last item of the night, SUB 24-2 and SUB 24-3, which are 2 preliminary and final plats for residential subdivisions at 12371 and 12553 Goldenrod Avenue in an R1B zone. The first for Garner Vine subdivision consists of 13 buildable lots on approximately 8 acres, and the second for Taffy Down subdivision is comprised of 12 buildable lots on just under 5 acres. And this is also another application being evaluated by the modern zoning code. The preliminary plats for both subdivisions were originally approved in December of 2021, along with a rezone from A1 to R1B. However, neither final plat was submitted before the original approvals expired. The subdivisions were reviewed together initially as they connect, share an internal roadway network, and are being developed in tandem. Each proposed roadway within the subdivisions will be dedicated as public streets. The proposed subdivisions will have 2 access points from Goldenrod Avenue, one serving as a primary access for each subdivision, with east-west connections between the subdivisions. There's also a proposed cul-de-sac extension of Paint Street to provide access to 4 lots in the southwest of the development. While typically the planning team does not support cul-de-sacs, 2 existing buildings lie along the path where the north and south roadway connection would extend. The applicant wishes to retain these buildings and incorporate them into the residential lots, one of which will be retained by the current property owner. In lieu of a street connection, the applicant has proposed a public micropath in Lot 6 of Taffy Down subdivision. There's another proposed cul-de-sac to serve the properties on the south side of Garner Vine subdivision. However, there's little expectation for additional roadway connections to the south and to the east. In lieu of a stub street to the east, a previously approved micropath is proposed in order to provide pedestrian connections should that property ever redevelop. ACHD has provided comments indicating that they are supportive of the proposal as designed. Looking at Garner Vine specifically, Lot 1 contains an existing house and accessory structures that are proposed to remain, and a condition of approval will require all access to be taken internally if that lot should ever redevelop. A condition of approval will require 10-foot detached sidewalks with a landscape buffer along Goldenrod Avenue, which is a collector roadway. The applicant is proposing to install a meandering 5-foot sidewalk and to retain existing trees along that street frontage. Of the 22 trees, 5 are labeled to be removed and 17 retained and protected. However, the applicant has not provided a tree mitigation plan verifying the health and size of the existing trees. A condition of approval will require the applicant to provide the tree mitigation plan for the entire property. To provide access to Lot 2, the applicant has proposed a common driveway. This common driveway will be stubbed to the eastern property line, shared with 4240 Cloverdale Road, thereby providing a consolidated point of vehicular access should the parcels along Cloverdale Road ever redevelop. Looking specifically at Taffy Downs subdivision, the lot sizes range from 8,918 square feet to 25,000 square feet. A condition of approval will require Lot 10 of the Taffy Downs subdivision to meet the minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet. Another requirement of the development code is to provide 10-foot wide sidewalks with the 8-foot wide landscape buffer adjacent to the collector roadway of Goldenrod Avenue with street trees every 40 lineal feet. Subdivisions are also required to provide one Class 3 tree for every 40 feet of perimeter landscaping, which amounts to 5 Class 3 trees along Goldenrod Avenue. All local streets within the subdivision must provide 5-foot wide detached sidewalks with an 8-foot wide landscape buffer and appropriate street trees. Finally, prior to either subdivision being heard before City Council, updated plats and landscape plans must be submitted to the planning team for review. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the commission here. I'll keep it brief since it's late at night and you're outnumbering us now. Yeah, as previously stated, we were approved in 2021. Some things have changed since then, some haven't. One is zoning code, but we're super excited to be able to bring this project back to you after a lot of work. We did a lot of work with coordinating with multiple agencies as well as irrigation districts to get everything lined up. And so part of what we've been able to do is work to really get a cohesive plan that I think everybody supports as far as with state agencies as well as public works and everybody involved. So we're excited to move forward. This was previously approved. We rezoned. We wanted to into R1B because we wanted to keep the continuity of the neighborhood, larger lots, as well as both owners. One that I represent is to be able to live in that neighborhood. And I do apologize. I didn't state my name.
Thank you.
Alex McDonald, 380 West State Street, Eagle, Idaho, 83616, representing the landowners. And so, yeah, we really are grateful for staff to be able to come back, bring this through. We've worked to meet all of the updated code requirements. And so we're in full support of those requirements and conditions of approval. But we would like to have you reconsider the sidewalk along Goldenrod. So when we were here in 2021, there was a lot of discussion on sidewalks, but more specifically trees and tree mitigation. We wanted to save trees. So what you're seeing on the images here on the screen is the landscape along Goldenrod. And if you can just flip through.
Yeah, right there.
Okay, thank you. So this is a landscape berm that has been there for almost 30 years. And so you can see these trees are quite large. We'd like to retain these trees as much as we can. And so at the time of approval in 2021, we worked with planning and zoning, this body to work and get a 5-foot meandering sidewalk. So that way we could save as much as these trees as we can. And so part of our landscape includes that. So we're asking for a reduction from 10 feet to 5 feet so we can save as much as we can of these back to our original landscape plan. Because we foresee if we were to go to 10 feet, most of these would be removed. And we just don't want that. So again, we're trying to keep the continuity of the neighborhood as well. But I think other than that, we have a really solid plan before you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Appreciate that. No one from the neighborhood association with us, so let's just go right into questions. No takers? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney, please. Yeah.
a question for staff regarding the applicant's discussion about sidewalks and goldenrod. Could you provide some background from staff's perspective?
Sure thing, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. When this was approved previously, the condition was for 5-foot sidewalks and detached sidewalks preliminarily. However, in reference to the trees that the applicant has spoken about, they were approved to have a meandering 5-foot wide detached primarily sidewalk along the Gardner Vines portion of Goldenrod Avenue. However, as this is now being considered under the modern zoning code, which does have the 10-foot wide detached sidewalk requirements along collector roadways, the proposed or the recommended condition of approval has been modified to reflect that.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sure thing, John.
Mr. Chairman,
Chris.
I have a question to the applicant, and maybe this is staff as well. So you're saying that 5 feet now, but that it meanders. So I'm curious, 6 feet, 7 feet? Can we get more than 5 feet? Less than 10? You're saying you can't do 10, but I'm asking, is there room for more than 5?
Yeah, I think we would be willing to go with a 6 foot. I think we can get as much. We do have, and why also in addition, we're asking for that meandering separated sidewalks. We have some irrigation boxes. These are in older neighborhoods. There's a lot of, other constraints going through that. So yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Bill.
Chris, I think packet page 436 has like a detail of like the path. It looks like this page.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you how it, in like for maybe 30% of it, it looks pretty close to the street, and then it kind of backs away from the street as it's moving around trees and those head gates for irrigation.
That's correct.
Crabapple trees.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer.
And just to confirm, the section of sidewalk that we disagree with, because if you combine both
Right.
items, it's just for this section where the trees are, because the rest of it does not have trees. It looks like it's just field. So the request is just for this particular section, is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Moore, we would request just the continuity so that way they'd be the same as you transition to subdivisions, because we do have, we're trying to run the development horizontal the same. So there's identical, and it matches kind of surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, John.
So for staff, I'm sorry if I missed this. Is Goldenrod a local or an arterial collector?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Goldenrod is a collector.
Thank you.
And Jesse, one of the conditions for design review is to complete a tree assessment and mitigation plan. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this would not be subject to design review as it's a straight subdivision.
Right.
And it's a combined preliminary and final plat. So the condition would be prior to going to council, the applicant submit a tree mitigation plan and updated plats reflecting the conditions of approval.
Okay. Very good. Okay. We good on questions? All right. Thank you both. There's really no one left to test. Do either of you gentlemen want to testify this evening?
The officer in the hallway might.
Okay, very good. And I think we only have one
Oh,
person.
maybe.
Oh.
You should have called it, Bob.
It's my job, man. They've been waiting all night.
True.
Good? Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, and there's no one left online. Go ahead and close public testimony. Rebuttal, yielding rebuttal.
Yielding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and bring this back before the commission. Again, SUBs 24-2. Sorry,
I'm sorry, can I? We just want to make sure we're.
we'll call this part of rebuttal. How about that?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Matt Swenson. I'm with Innovative Housing Solutions. Address 5421 Paulson Circle, Boise, Idaho. Brother McDonald, or Mr. McDonald and myself are two different representing the two different projects. And we just want to make sure that the Taffy downside, which is the portion that does not show all of the landscape area there, you won't feel those two. They look like two very different subdivisions there, but on the frontage road of Goldenrod, you won't see that. there. It won't feel like two different subdivisions there. And so again, we'd hope and propose that 6-foot sidewalk would maintain from both sides, even though there's not currently landscaping there. The current landscape plan does require some significant landscaping in there. And so the continuity will exist throughout that. We also do have a tree mitigation plan. I don't know that it's been submitted, and it's probably not updated since. Yeah, so we do have it. We just haven't put it in there yet. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll call that rebuttal. We'll close rebuttal, bring this back before the commission. Again, we got 2 subdivisions here, so we're recommending to city council. And this is the last item of the night. All right. Find my 2A here.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney.
I move that we recommend approval of the sub 240002 and sub 24003 with all the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Gillespie with a second by Commissioner,
Mooney.
sorry, Commissioner Mooney. Thank you.
The other bald guy.
And a second by Commissioner Seha. John, any discussion?
I agree with everything in the staff report, and I guess I defer back to Commissioner Seah's remarks about, and I think earlier this evening about sidewalks. And if we don't do it now, we're giving it up for future generations. So I feel for those trees, but I think the right thing to do is to go with the terms and conditions as stated by the staff.
Okay, any other comments or thoughts?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Seah?
I too agree with the staff report findings. Back to the comment I made earlier, here we don't have sidewalks. It's a collector street. Our new zoning code calls for 10-foot. So that is one of the main reasons why I am supporting this motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Torres, yeah.
I also want to concur with what Commissioner Mooney and Commissioner Seah said, both about the sidewalks earlier, but also about how if we don't actually follow the code, we're not really going to have much to give back in feedback if we always amend everything rather than following what the actual code says. So I agree. I feel for the trees, but I am going to support the motion.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Moore.
I vaguely remember this when it came, it looks really familiar. I think I remember the conversation when it came through the first time, and it was a lengthy discussion about trees and the sidewalk and all that good stuff. And, that's looking at the photos and all that stuff. It's a fairly mature frontage, right? Like those are some pretty mature trees, and you kind of wonder, if that's really supporting because on one hand, you want sidewalks. And on the other hand, at what point are you sacrificing the character of the neighborhood by getting rid of this volume of landscaping and of trees? And I don't know if that's exactly what the conversation was previously. But I do know that, that was a pretty big consideration, and it still is in my mind. I mean, those trees have only gotten bigger at this point. Obviously it'd be helpful to know that all of them are healthy and worthy of being saved. That could be a pretty significant determination in whether or not you would want to provide that amendment to the requirement, but I'm kind of on the fence as to whether I agree with the motion or not.
Mr. Chairman.
No, please.
So I agree with the motion. And I understand your concern. I'd refer everyone to packet page 436. The second sentence of that paragraph says, I think addresses this kind of issue of trying to protect these trees and have a 10-foot sidewalk. So this is how I'm interpreting condition 2A, because this is what it says in the text. While the planning team is supportive of retaining healthy, mature trees, a condition of approval, I assume this means 2A, will require the applicant to provide a 10-foot wide setback, but will allow for meandering in order to retain as many existing mature trees as possible. So when I'm voting for the plan as is from the city, I assume that it's allowing meandering, but it's just say you got to meander 10 feet, not 5. So hopefully they can figure out as they meander how to save as many trees as they can. So that's kind of where so I'll be supporting it.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. I'm going to support as well with a huge but. I appreciate your thought process, and I don't want to hold up the project. I do support the greater use, the greater parcel layout, the bigger picture stuff, right? I think it would be helpful. You're going to you get to go to council anyway, so you get to have this conversation again, right? So I would encourage you to propose the same proposal to council. I think it would be helpful to have the tree mitigation plan updated prior to that, so that you understand the health of the trees as well, right? If you get a arborist that says, oh, 60% of those pines are diseased, well, there we go, right? It's pretty much resolved itself. So, we have most of the information, maybe don't have all of it, right? In a perfectly clear picture. You put in a 5-foot detached sidewalk, there's still going to be impact to the root systems of those trees anyway, as well. So, again, I like the use. I like that you blended in the subdivision with the surrounding neighborhood very well. Continued the discussion with council on the trees. Okay, that's my thought. Okay. Whoa. Hello. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. Again, we have a motion to recommend approval of both SUB 24-2 and 24-3. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys. Thank you for your patience too. Appreciate that. Yeah. We are adjourned.